In front of the facade of the White House, it is not being obliterated as Donald Trump, who promised that he was not going to take a wrecking ball to the existing structure, has taken a wrecking ball to existing structure. I got to say, Mick, it really is. It is hard to watch that, and it's hard to believe that any president could destroy the White House and take a wrecking ball to an existing structure so historic. That is what's happening. It'd be one thing if you were building on or you were doing things inside, but to take literally a wrecking ball to the White House. It's grotesque. It's just grotesque.
Yeah, and this after the Rose Garden and I guess the patio that they have put in, which you could argue, but this
far different.
is painful. I mean, this is historic structure.
It's history being torn to shreds. And again, is everybody? I mean, so if somebody wants to go into the White House, the next person wants to just knock down all the walls and turn it into a disco. Congress can't do anything. I mean, seriously, you're destroying like one of the most historic structures on the planet.
Yeah, and the cost.
And are we saying that whoever we elect president has the right to destroy, just tear things up, tear it to the ground, turn it into something else? Kind of crazy.
Yeah, I don't think it's not your home that you purchased in Jersey.
No, it's not yours. You rent it from the American people for 4 years.
If you've been watching the corporate fake news media for the past couple days, and if you have, you should really stop. That stuff will rot your brain. You'll wind up as stupid as the people on the other side of the camera if you're not careful. You may have noticed they have come up with a brand new hoax. And they sure do go through hoaxes quickly these days. In Trump's first term, they had the same 4 or 5 hoaxes that they cycled through on a regular schedule. At least it seemed like a regular schedule. Because they all switched hoaxes on the same day, and they all switched from the same hoax to the same hoax. But who knows? Maybe that was all just a remarkably uncanny coincidence. But now they are at least putting in the effort to invent a new hoax every week or two, which I guess is an improvement, but let's face it, they did need to go in a different direction for Trump's second term, because they couldn't just bring back the same batch of hoaxes that they beat into the ground from early 2017 through early 2021, especially since one of them was Trump is a Russian intelligence asset who stole the 2016 election, and another one of them was Trump is in mental decline and his cabinet needs to remove him from power under the 25th Amendment. And I guess even our friends in the fake news performance artist community have enough self-awareness to realize they can't really do that second one again after they spent Joe Biden's entire presidency insisting he was totally fine. Nope, no decline here. As he was sleeping more hours per day than the average house cat, falling up the airplane stairs, shaking hands with ghosts, saying hello to dead people, having bathroom accidents in the Vatican in the presence of the Holy Father, allegedly. The point being, this week's new hoax is that Trump is taking a wrecking ball to the White House and destroying things just because destroying things is what bad orange fascist autocrats love to do. Joe and Mika were very pearl-clutchingly upset over it. We will probably stick that clip at the start of the video. And Hillary Clinton sent out some very strongly worded tweets. But as per usual, they are all ridiculous lying buffoons. So today we're going to talk about the actual history of the White House East Wing and what Trump is actually doing to it and why that is a good and proper thing. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of October. This is Curmudgeon's Corner. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where bedpans and wash basins were good enough for my ancestors, and by God, they are good enough for me. Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to Curmudgeon's Corner. Let's separate the actual truth from the media Democrat lies, shall we? First of all, if you saw the demolition footage that was being shown by your MSNBC and your CNN, you might have concluded, because they are liars and they want you to draw false conclusions, that the demolition is being done to the White House proper, to the actual executive mansion, but it's not. It's the East Wing that the alterations are being done to, the East Wing that wasn't even a proper building, strictly speaking, until 1942. There's nothing historically or architecturally significant about the East Wing. It doesn't house anything more significant than the White House movie theater, Barack Obama's stupid basketball court that he destroyed Richard Nixon's bowling alley in order to build. And nobody in the fake news media got upset about that one. Wonder why that could be. And it's also where the First Lady's office is located, and the office of the White House Social Secretary, and the office of the White House Official Engraver and Calligrapher. And that's it. But there's actually something far more important that sits underneath the East Wing, which we will get to in a couple of moments. So what is Trump actually doing to the East Wing? He's making better use of the space. The ratio between the amount of acreage the East Wing takes up and the importance of what happens within that two-story building is not a good ratio. So Trump's going to build a state ballroom there because the White House badly needs an indoor ceremonial and entertainment space that can accommodate more than like 17 people, which it doesn't currently have, and that's an embarrassment for the country. The president's executive residence and its associated complexes shouldn't have less indoor ceremonial space than the convention center in Muncie, Indiana, but it currently does, and Trump's going to fix that. As it is now, the biggest interior space in the White House is the East Room on the ground floor of the original executive mansion. That's where all your state dinners are held and your Medal of Honor ceremonies and so forth. Basically, any White House event where more than 50 people are present, it's held in the East Room. But the East Room can only accommodate a couple of hundred people at best. And if you stick a couple hundred people in that room, nobody is going to have very much personal space. So the problem you've always had with White House events is that if you want to accommodate more than a couple hundred people, you have to put an overflow area out on the East Lawn, set up some tents and some umbrellas and what have you. And that's the same area where Trump just recently built that new patio, because for the people who had to be in the overflow area, the ladies' high-heeled shoes would sink directly into the ground. And for Trump, a man who is in the hospitality business, things like that drive him absolutely crazy. As well they should, but the patio only solves an ancillary part of the problem. The main problem still exists, namely the fact that there is no interior space in the entire White House complex that is bigger than your average high school cafeteria. So Trump's going to build a magnificent state ballroom on part of the site where the current East Wing complex stands, and it's going to be able to accommodate 900 people. So it's more than triple the capacity of the East Room. And the U.S. taxpayer isn't going to pay one single dime. Trump is paying part of the cost himself. He's got a couple of his patriotic billionaire friends making contributions too. The total cost is going to be $250, $300 million. And let's not pretend the president is somehow not allowed to make alterations to the White House complex as he sees fit. Because presidents have always done that. They have always built things and torn things down and modified things to suit their own taste, but nobody ever complains about it, except when it's Trump doing it. And with that in mind, we now present the actual history of the site where the White House East Wing currently stands. It was President Thomas Jefferson in 1801, when he became only the second occupant of the executive mansion, who first said, you know what, this is stupid. The president's house is not very big. It's not a very grandiose structure. We are a self-governing democracy after all, so our head of state lives in a house and not a palace. But it is sat here in the middle of this gigantic site, and it makes it look even smaller than it is. We need to do something that makes the house look more appropriate to its surrounding environs. And so Jefferson, who was quite the fan of classical Greco-Roman design and also an amateur architect of some repute in his own right, he decides that 2 colonnaded terraces need to be built, extending out from the executive mansion to the west and the east. They didn't have any utilitarian purpose. They didn't lead to anywhere, really. The intent was purely aesthetic and architectural, as Jefferson thought the White House would look better in the space in which it sat if it had an expanded footprint. And Jefferson's terraces still exist today, and they are much loved, and their location determined the locations of the later west and east wings. Nothing else happens in the area of the future East Wing until 1834, when President Andrew Jackson decides, you know what? We've got an underground spring out by Jefferson's East Colonnade, and indoor plumbing is all the rage lately, so let's say we run some water pipes down that colonnade, and we will set up some spigots so the White House grooms can wash the horse shit off of their feet. Later in that same decade, President Martin Van Buren expands on that idea by taking Jackson's spigots and creating a series of outdoor shower baths, which sounds primitive by our modern 21st century sensibilities, but back then it was cutting-edge technology. The idea of bathing indoors was still some decades off. For the next several decades, the bank of shower baths remain in place, and further advantage is taken of the underground water pipes by the building of a greenhouse. So now the president's guests can enjoy fresh fruits and vegetables even in the dead of winter, and isn't modern technology such a wondrous thing indeed? It's not until the Theodore Roosevelt administration in the first decade of the 20th century that anything gets built on the site of the present East Wing that could be described as an actual building. Roosevelt tears down the greenhouse, he gets rid of Van Buren's shower baths, and he builds a cloakroom that serves as an entranceway for incoming White House guests, and he also builds a sort of carport/carriage house, since we're now in the decade where we're making the transition between carriages and horseless carriages. So the idea is visitors will be able to park their car or their horse or their carriage. They will proceed into the cloakroom, drop off their hats and their overcoats on a series of handy-dandy hooks and pegs that are conveniently arranged on the wall, and then they will process down Jefferson's East Colonnade into the executive mansion to be greeted by the president. And that was the way things remained for most of the next 4 decades until the Second World War and the administration of Theodore Roosevelt's cousin Franklin. It's 1942 now. The Germans are kicking a lot of ass over in Europe. They're trying to develop long-range bombers that might potentially be able to hit the American mainland. And moreover, if we are working on an atomic bomb, as we are, they are probably working on one too. The point being, we probably need to build some sort of hardened underground bunker to which the president can be evacuated if there is an emergent threat to the White House. So we'll build this bunker on the east side of the White House where the garage and the cloakroom currently stand, and in order to disguise the fact that we are building a secret emergency bunker, we will also stick a nondescript 2-story building on top of it, and we will pretend that was the whole point of the construction project, because we need some new office space or something. Just make up some convincing lie, says the administration to the press office. So the building that currently constitutes the East Wing never had any real intended function except to disguise the fact that it stood on top of the site of the presidential emergency bunker, whose existence was never disclosed to the public until after the events of 11 September 2001. It was Rosalind Carter who first decided in 1977 that the First Lady should have her own dedicated office space, and we're not using that East Wing building for anything except the movie theater and Nixon's bowling alley, so do you think I could have that? To which her husband Jimmy said, "You got it, honey. It's all yours." And that gets us right up to the present day. So how about let's stop pretending the East Wing is some imperishable historic and architectural treasure, because it totally isn't. And when Trump finishes building the big, beautiful White House State Ballroom, it's going to serve a far more useful, far more important purpose than anything else that has ever stood upon that portion of the White House grounds in the last 2.25 centuries. And with that, we now return you to your regularly scheduled dishonest fake news media wailing and moaning and histrionics. I'm done. That is all I've got. This has been Curmudgeon's Corner for Wednesday, the 22nd of October, 2025. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Get off my lawn.